This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's pod. This is a show for the week of March 13th, 2023. This week we discuss recent comments from Bob Iger about wanting the Disney parks to be more accessible to families, our takes on spontaneous park entertainment, more on what that actually means later.
Glad you're going to explain that.
Yes, and our top three characters that need to be in any Disney nighttime spectacular in 2023. As you can see, there's probably reoccurring themes in the shows, but they keep popping up in what everybody else is talking about. But first, as usual, Phil, what's going on in our Disney World? What are people talking about in the news?
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to highlight was that Disney had a presentation at the South by Southwest conference, and they showed off some new technology that could, I guess, play a role in character meets in the future. So the first one was that giant Hulk meet and greet character, which we've seen before, but they showed him again and announced that he's going to be going over to Disneyland Paris and be meeting at the Avengers campus over there. But then they showed off two other new things. The first one was this smaller robot that they didn't specifically say, but it certainly looks like Officer Judy Hopps from Zootopia. And you're like, oh, this little robot's on like roller skates and stuff. But then like it does like a somersault barrel roll and then can pick itself up off the ground, and like it's really doing some cool stuff, and like the way it kind of can balance itself out. And then they also showed off a Tinkerbell meet and greet opportunity where it looks like, you know, actual Tinkerbell, but like I'm holding up my fingers, so that doesn't really work well for a podcast. But you know, like a 2 or 3 inch tall Tinkerbell, like that you would be in a lantern. But that you could have a conversation with, I guess, similar technology to like, you know, the Turtle Talk with Crush, but with more of like a hologram 3D look and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat to see, like, I don't know, these types of things and creating these experiences that are a little out of the norm seem like something that separates Disney. So it was nice to see technology like this that was for, I guess, enhancing the guest experience versus like for, you know, making park pass reservation systems and stuff like that.
This is the inspiration for our takes today. A couple of things. I think the Hulk is really cool. We've seen that before. This is the second time it's been brought out on stage somewhere. The Tinkerbell item was really awesome. I think it only really works for Tinkerbell or small characters because of the way it's probably done up, unless they want to install something more permanent, because it's probably similar to what they do with Rey in Rise of the Resistance. Yeah. The Officer Hopps thing. This is no boss dynamic robot that you can see kind of like fighting people or doing somersaults in air type of thing. But it looked really cool. I don't know what this somersault looked like, kind of janky to me, and like I don't know what was going on. It kind of like fell forward into,
a little bit. Yeah.
But what I thought was really impressive is when the person went to go pick him up, it kind of raised its arms to be picked up like a kid would, and then when he put him on his shoulder, like the legs, you know, kind of spread up so it could fit around, you know, their neck like a kid, like sitting on your shoulder. I thought that was the impressive part. I thought that was really cool. I just hope it wasn't scripted to do that, but it looked neat. Like, I don't know where they would put the Judy Hopps robot in the park. Would this probably be like a queue thing, or would it be like actually like kind of walking around the parks? What do you think, Phil? Where would they use this?
Well, I don't know. Like obviously we know they're building the Zootopia area in Shanghai at Disneyland, and there's always, you know, continued rumors about it coming to Walt Disney World, with obviously the latest being some of that Blue Sky presentation for Animal Kingdom. You know, it reminded me of the Spider-Man robot that they do that's more for like a show that's kind of up and away. So I guess something like that. You know, they have the whole backdrop and the cityscape on Zootopia. Maybe there's an area where like they can kind of be separate, because obviously you can't have a million people like, you know, messing with touching the robot. It's got to be a little bit away from people. So maybe there's a way to have sort of like a demonstration or something like that. I don't know. It's
got to be somewhere where it's like apparent it's like a free walking robot. Because if it's like kind of up on a stage somewhere, you might as well do like an animatronic, like
exactly,
attached to the stage, right? So This lends me to believe that if they ever use something like this, it's either done sporadically in the park or it's kind of set up where you can tell that it's like, there's no strings, right? It's kind of
Maybe like how they,
makes it impressive.
they brought out the Muppet Labs with had like the Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker on like the bike thing and stuff like that, where like a cast member kind of would come out with it and it would do a little show or something like that.
Maybe.
So maybe something like that in the Zootopia area. It'll be. It's a good point because the point of it is that it's like kind of free moving and on its own, but you can't just have the robot completely out on its own. Like so,
but here's the thing:
how to make it work.
You got to show like it did some skating, whatever, but then somebody picked it up and it was interactive that way. So maybe that's the cast member interacting with it. Like, it's all dressed up. It's sitting on somebody's shoulders. And when they find like Peter Pan in the parks, right? Peter Pan just kind of shows up and kind of does or like the stepsisters. But maybe this Judy Hopps, like you just see Judy Hopps on somebody's shoulders walking through the crowds, and whenever they find like an open space, he kind of puts her down and she kind of roller skates forward, and then another cast member picks her up and they kind of do like a 10-second like demonstration and then move on its way, right? It's not something like they're going to get mobbed like the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda or something else like that.
Yeah,
anyway,
either that or it's all done for the Zootopia themed Star Cruiser hotel.
Yes, exactly.
So the next news item was, it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but they released the details for how the virtual queue for Tron will work. It'll be the exact same as for Guardians. So 7 a.m. is the first spot for people with reservations for the park. 1 p.m. is the second drop where you had to have had scanned into the park. And if there's any available after park hopping, you could theoretically get it. And then on the days where they have the deluxe evening hours, there will be a 6 p.m. drop for people eligible for that. The interesting news, though, is that it was confirmed that even when the Tron virtual queue starts, Cosmic Rewind over in Epcot will still be using their virtual queue. They will not drop it, so there will be 2 virtual queues going on. I guess they're hoping that the Disney IT can handle that. Obviously, it's 2 separate parks, so it's not like it really conflicts with each other or anything like that, because at 7 a.m. you have to have a reservation for that park, so it's a separate group of people. But it's just interesting, and obviously it re-sparked that discussion of, do we like having virtual queues? And it seems to be pretty mixed when you see a lot of comments. Some people are happy about it, but a lot of people are kind of ready for it to drop and just want to be able to ride it multiple times a day, even if they have to wait online and stuff. So what are your thoughts? Are you glad they're kind of keeping this around, given your experiences with getting on Guardians, or are you ready for it to move to a standby?
I like the virtual queue thing. And you're right. It is mixed, and it's almost 50-50, right? Yeah. Some people like it, some people don't. And people that don't are usually the locals that are going quite often, right? I think a lot of the vloggers and park people that kind of do that type of thing, they hate it because it's one extra thing they have to do every time.
Yeah, it's either that or the people that really like sleep in on vacation and like, I don't want to have to deal with 7 a.m. That's some of the
but like even Guardians, after a while, you're able to easily get the 1 o'clock drop anyway. So I don't think that's a valid complaint. Anyway, am I happy about this? Yes, I love the virtual queue. And the main reason why I like it, even if I'm not up at 7 o'clock, my last vacation, I missed the 7 o'clock one and I got the 1 o'clock one.
Yep.
And then the next time I was in boarding group 3. Right. And I just hope that the only thing I hope that they keep the leniency on, like, if your boarding group is called at 9, I can kind of show up at like noon and still use it. Mm-hmm. I guess they can turn you away, but none of the cast members were turning anybody away. So I hope they keep that for the most part.
Yep.
Now, the reason why I like that is, to me, it's a free individual lightning lane, right? I know when I can get online, the line is for me personally, it was always 30 to 40 minutes to get through the whole queue, which I find reasonable for a marquee attraction. Mm-hmm. And then other people reported that the boarding group took them 20, 25 minutes, which is great. I like the idea of being able to show up to a ride and not have a 60 plus minute wait for the attraction. Me personally, will never wait to go on an attraction a second time and have to take up 4 hours of my day for 2 lines and for 2 rides of the attraction. I don't want to do that. So right. I like the virtual queue. I do feel for the people who want to ride it multiple times or just show up and get on the standby and they don't care they have to wait 90 minutes. So, I do understand that point of view, but for me personally, I like having both. And the other detail is I like that it's the same, right? There's no different set of rules you have to learn for Tron.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, is this the Tron rule or is this the Guardians rule? I don't remember, right? Like, it's, if you learned how to use Guardians, you're going to learn how to do Tron. And it's just straight across the board, same times, everything. and that's what I like.
Yep.
So what's your point of view on this? You like it?
So mine's
similarly,
definitely
or?
similar.
Yep.
As long as it's like how Guardians is now, where, unless there's like some huge issue with the ride that day, like you're basically guaranteed to get one by at least the 1 p.m. drop.
Right.
When it was like, at least for the first 6 months or whatever, that Rise was open
That was
when they
awful.
have it. And it felt like such a crapshoot. And you just saw the disappointment on so many people's faces when they did get the 1 p.m. and they were like, this was such a big part of our trip and we weren't able to do it. So that's, I think, frustrating. But as long as it's like Guardians, where 99% of the time, if you want to get one, you'll get one during the day. It will be interesting, to your point about the leniency, if they follow that at Tron, because all the feedback has been, it seems like a much better experience at night. So are people who get like a 10 a.m. return time, are they going to come that time, or are they going to wait till at nighttime? And then there's like a bottleneck at night with everyone showing up. So that'll be really interesting to see if they keep the leniency or if they start enforcing that a little bit more.
That's a very good point. So I'm curious to see how they do that. The only other thing I could think of is I don't think there should be too much of an issue getting on, only because it's another thrill ride. So young kids can't get this at Magic Kingdom because there's going to be a lot younger crowd there. So if this were to be another dark ride, I can see this being an issue, kind of like Rise, right? At Magic Kingdom, if it's like you can't get on because everybody wants to get on. I think there's still a smaller crowd of people that want to get on Tron versus a dark ride type of attraction. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how it affects the rest of the park.
Absolutely. And then the last news item I was going to bring up, I kind of grouped a couple things together under the topic of Disney Parks achievements and or challenges. There was a story going around where a person is trying to ride every ride in all 12 Disney parks around the world in 12 days. So he's going from like park to park to continent and trying to ride every single ride in every single park within 12 days. And he's got a sign on his backpack as he's going around to do it. And then another person just set a Guinness record by visiting Disneyland 2,995 consecutive days.
What is that, like 8 years? Something like that?
So 365, so about like 3 years every 1,000. So yeah, like 10 years really. Like
I'm getting my calculator out here. 2,000 live on air divided by
it's almost 3,000.
8.2 years. 8.2 years. And I don't know if that counts for leap year or not. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, and I'm assuming like obviously there was the break when the park was closed for COVID and stuff like that. But still, so that kind of I think it's interesting and stuff that people have this passion and try to do things. And you always see people wanting to do like, I'm going to visit all 4 parks in a day at Walt Disney World or something like that. But I was wondering, what do you think of things like this, whether challenges or something like that? Is that something you'd like to do at some point related to Disney? And if so, what challenge would you consider doing?
So I got I did all 4 parks in one day. That's much of a challenge, but that was the challenge to have my wife along with me and also having a good time while we're doing it. I kind of enjoyed planning out how to do it. Right. So planning is always half the fun with the two of us. I would really like to do all attractions at Walt Disney World, though it's harder with the hopper passes the way things are right now. To me, that's super interesting, and I would definitely see if I could do like a weekend to do something like that. So that would be my first real challenge, is all attractions at Disney World all in one day type of thing. So that would be my first one. Anything that you would consider doing?
Yeah. So, well, first I would just I appreciate your comment of like how when you were doing the 4 parks, you were like still trying to enjoy yourself, and that's where some of these things like. To me, like trying to do all the rides in all 12 parks, and like it feel like a chore after a while. Like I feel like I'm not really enjoying myself. So the one I was thinking about that sounds neat, and we saw that one. I know one vlogger did this recently when they set up the new Breeze airline path that goes from Orlando out to John Wayne Airport that's near Disneyland. Is they went in the morning to Walt Disney World and like saw the parade there, and then hopped on a plane and went to Disneyland and saw the fireworks in Disneyland the same day.
Oh, that's neat.
I think something like that would be fun. Maybe not even doing the parks in the same day, but just the idea of like going to Walt Disney World, experiencing that, hopping on a plane, and like immediately doing Disneyland out in California. I think
that's stressful to me.
Yeah,
I mean, like at least I'm staying on property. Like you got to catch a plane and deal with security and all that other kind of nonsense.
Well, that's why in my head when I'm doing it, I would have a travel day in the middle. I would do like Disney parks and then have that travel day and then do more Disney. But I don't know.
Well, I could do that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all 12 Disney parks in 12 days around the globe. You just have travel days.
Well, yeah, I guess so, but I don't know. So obviously, I want to do an easier version
Yes.
of that. But
Yes.
I don't know. When I saw that, seemed like a cool concept, though, to be like doing Disney in Florida and then some sort of Disney experience in California in the same day would be kind of neat.
Just living your Disney life.
That'll be the Disney news for this week, and that moves us on to our takes, which Jason put in here as spontaneous, in quotes, park entertainment. So why don't you explain what you meant by that, and hopefully I answered it correctly.
Yeah, so this is basically spontaneous park entertainment. It's not something that's scheduled, right? Like all the parades are scheduled entertainment. They just don't pop out of nowhere. Cavalcades would be a type of spontaneous park entertainment. The street entertainment, Disney Hollywood Studios, that would be spontaneous park entertainment. When you see Peter Pan walking through Fantasyland from one place to another, that's spontaneous park entertainment. Basically, things that are not in the app that you just kind of find that aren't there from open to close is what I consider it. It could be almost anything. Like you can go even the groundskeepers with their brooms and water drawing on the cement, like the walkways, right? Drawing a Mickey or a Goofy, something that you just walk by, you maybe stop for a minute or two, and then you carry on with your day. And I wasn't expecting that. That was fun.
Gotcha.
So I did not read yours here until now. So I'm going to go first with my overrated one. And to me, that's character meet and greets.
Okay.
Now, these are still phenomenal, right? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's no really bad spontaneous park entertainment because I'll take all of it, right? But I think one of the ones that gets the most attention, where I think some of the other things should get more attention, is character meet and greets. To me, they are just like any other character meet and greet. Sometimes they can be awful experiences like The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, where they get swamped and all of a sudden you're in a crowd. You really can't enjoy it. Or like the Stormtroopers in Galaxy's Edge, where all of a sudden you're just kind of following them along type of thing, and it just gets a little out of hand, right? So to me, character meet and greets, while they're awesome, can also have some negative connotations if too many people catch on, and then it's just not fun anymore. It's just a giant crowd again. So what's your overrated one? Unless you have comments on my character meet and greet.
No. So So first I wanted to say, I really like entertainment in the parks. I really like anything that brings that kinetic energy. So I was almost tempted to write nothing here. Like there's nothing that's overrated. Some of mine was along the lines of things that you pointed out, but I think beyond character meets, it could be, some of the entertainment, some of the pavilions in Epcot, or if there's just like a music act or a parade, anything that is kind of comes out of nowhere, is loud, creates confusion, and specifically starts blocking pathways and creates congestion and stuff like that. Something like that, because that can kind of really disorient people, and just kind of like, if it's not something you care about, you're just like, excuse me, trying to get by here. Like, which, sometimes when those acts, like the one in France and stuff like that, like they can get good crowds that are really building out, and you're like, I just want to walk by. So anything that really kind of interferes with traffic flow.
We're really fighting each other on this thing, because while I overrated character meet and greets, we'll go right to properly rated and go right to yours, because you said they were properly rated. So why don't you go on with that?
So I said specifically the character appearances that are sort of like those bonus things. So like the example I put down there was like Winnie the Pooh catching butterflies out in the field, or like you pointed out, when the stepsisters were up on that like balcony and like yelling down to people, or they do the country bears and things. So things that aren't really in the way, but are just like extra little things happening that create like little fun moments. So those types of things. That's why I put character appearances to separate them from like meet and greets.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good distinction I didn't really think of, because now that you keep saying that, like, to me, the when Chip and Dale are having a picnic, or Winnie the Pooh catching butterflies, where it's kind of like in an area you can't go to but you can watch from a distance type of thing.
Yeah.
I tend to think those are fine, but for me, meet and greets were like you have a character walking into the park, right, creating a crowd. I didn't like that. But then again, when the stepsisters are kind of, off to the area or off to the side in an area or from a balcony, those are actually really cool. It adds good dynamics. to the area. My properly rated one was cavalcades. I think universally everybody loved these additions to the parks. It adds good dynamic energy to the park. I find that they're really fun to kind of just watch, or you're really not watching them. You just kind of, they go by. It's like, oh, that was fun. And you carry on with your day. And they usually move pretty swiftly, so they're not creating much traffic, which you hate. So my properly rated one was cavalcades. And I think of all the additions or subtractions from the COVID era, I think this one, I hope, stays with us for some time.
Okay. I will say that submission kind of then confused me with the topic, because those are scheduled. Those aren't.
Well, they used to not be scheduled, right?
Okay.
Sometimes the cavalcades come in and stuff like that. They have I could have sworn last summer there were some that weren't scheduled, that they were just appearing.
Okay.
Did they stop doing those altogether?
I don't know. I just know there is a schedule. Like, I'm looking online now. Like, the Mickey Celebration Cavalcade is 10:45, 1:35,
well, that
4:25, and so I guess
remember
that's
when like Tinkerbell came out and like
Right.
a thing, and it was just a single float, not like a parade.
right when they were first coming back, I guess. Right.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll go to my underrated just to counteract your overrated. My underrated is musicians. I love just music in the park. Even if I'm not paying attention, I just like hearing something different from an area. So when the gentleman comes out and plays the piano on Main Street and starts playing some music, or you have, even though I know the Dapper Dans are scheduled, there's things like that. There's sometimes singers at Hollywood Studios. Well, that's more scheduled. It's not like something you expect to happen. So I kind of like, live music being played. That's one of my favorite things about Disney Springs, is going through and you have some guy sometimes playing a guitar under a pavilion somewhere, or you have a rock band that's playing on stage, or all sorts of different kind of musical kind of entertainment. I really love that. And I don't think that gets talked about enough, even though it probably gets plenty of attention.
Yeah.
But it's never number one on anybody's list, and I think it should be higher up.
Yep. No, I like
What's
that
your
one.
underrated?
I put the Citizens of Main Street / Hollywood, if they're ever coming back, but like the cast that are supposed to like live in that area, or even like when Galaxy's Edge first opened up, and the cast members were more like, we are citizens of Batu, and like they do it in the Wizarding World too. There's like casts that are out there as like people who live in that city or that area, and I think that just adds so much level of immersion, where they're not like the superhero, the name, they're just like a character they made up or whatever, but it just makes it feel like more of a real place. And usually they're really good, like kind of improv actors and stuff like that. And it's just, it just adds a lot of fun and just more of that kinetic energy. And yeah, sometimes they can get little bits of crowds, but I think they're pretty good about kind of moving through things and not really overdoing it and stuff like that. So anything like that, where they're quote unquote citizens of the land.
I think the parks really need more of these. Like I remember listening to like the history of the parks. It's probably like a Jim Hill story, where they used to have like cowboy shoot offs, or with Zorro on the rooftops of like Frontierland in Disneyland in the 50s and the 60s and stuff like that. I think that really adds to the parks, and unfortunately there's not many of those left. It's just kind of residual of basically the evil stepsisters kind of running around doing some things these days. The only thing, I think the closest other thing in Magic Kingdom is probably the citizens of the Haunted Mansion, essentially.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, like
being spooky.
that's a good area, like good example as well. Like people who kind of take on that role and just add that additional level of immersion.
100%. All right, I think it was a good hour takes today.
Yeah. Once I got the topic.
Yes. I have to get into the habit of when I write the idea into our show notes, we have to fill it. I should write an explainer on the side for everybody. But go ahead.
But I think I did all right. All right.
Yes, you did excellent.
So with that, we'll just a reminder of our social media accounts. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We're all at the DBC, and our Discord channel. And I wanted to welcome a new member to our Discord channel, 90 Fiddle 2. So welcome.
Welcome to Discord. Everybody get onto Discord. There's been a couple new members that have been like lurkers for a while, but they're finally planning their Disney trip, so they're coming in asking for advice and stuff like that.
So definitely like chime in, but like also don't feel like, I know there's a lot of us are there all the time, so don't feel like intimidated or feel like you have to post all the time or anything like that. If you want to post it, like come in and out. Have a good time.
Like some of my favorite conversations on any message board is when somebody asks like simple advice questions and being able to share our knowledge with you. Because again, there's a bunch of people that are the same people that have been talking for I don't know how many 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
So chime in, start asking questions or throwing your opinions in there. Your opinions are just as good as my silly opinions on a daily
I was going to say they're probably better.
Yeah, probably. All right, we're going to move on to today's topic. This was one that you were thinking about, and it's probably why it wasn't a news story because you wanted to go into it here. But the topic was how to make a Walt Disney World trip more accessible. In sixples and quotes because Bob Iger used
Igor.
that, in a Q&A today. So why don't you
Yeah.
give
So
the background
this
on it?
past week it could have been a news topic, but I kind of wanted to spill it out a little bit more. Bob Iger participated in a Q&A with Morgan Stanley. They had a tech conference, and he was talking a lot about different things. He talked about streaming, and if you're interested in that, there's a lot of little tidbits in there about what's going to happen with Hulu and all those sorts of things. But he also talked a lot about the trips or the parks and how there's been a lot of pushback against some of the changes that have happened. A lot of them happened under Chapek, although we know, they were certainly starting when Iger was still the CEO before he left the first time. But, now he's looking back and at least in hindsight saying he thinks some of the changes were too aggressive, some of the price hikes and the add-ons and stuff like that. And it just says it feels like there's a bit of a disconnect between, what people are willing to do and how it impacts their trip. So basically what he said is that they need to be careful about that. And in his words, he stressed that it's important to make Disney accessible to families. So I thought it was an interesting use of words that, it's definitely not making it cheaper.
He didn't use the word affordable. He used the word
Right.
accessible.
So what do you think that means? And what are ways that you think a trip to Walt Disney World could become more accessible to families?
Before I go into that, I still want to say that I said this right before we started recording. We are constantly going back to conversations and topics that have to deal with the cost and the expenditure of Walt Disney World. And I absolutely hate, I'm going to use the strong word hate, these types of conversations because they should not be happening. Yes, Disney World should be expensive because it's a fantastic experience, but it's becoming more and more unaffordable to a lot of people. And it's at least souring me for planning out my next trip when it's such a big bill to pay. However, we're not going to talk about money specifically because I think that's basically he didn't want to talk about money on stage. He wanted to make it accessible. So I think he actually meant basically all about money at this point because I just think he wanted to may use a more appetizing turn of phrase, right, and not bring it back to cost. But let's kind of go down what that actually means for accessible. So accessible means to me families that might not be able to go because of XYZ reasons and that are not money. Like they have the money to spend, but they're finding it too much of a pain in the butt to get into the parks to get down there. And the first one is obviously Magical Express, the all-inclusive feeling. People might not have gone maybe five or 6 years ago and remember that really great experience about all they have to do is drop their bags off at their departing airport and they showed up in their rooms and they showed up at the airport and they showed up on their and they didn't have to do anything. I think that's a major issue. So now Disney's just like any other destination. You have to figure out how to get there and how to get your bags there safely. So I think that's the number one reason why maybe families might decide either not to go or maybe to alter their plans, maybe go to other parks, maybe do other things, or maybe go to Florida in general and maybe spend a couple of days at Disney World and go on. Would you say that would be the number one accessibility kind of factor in this conversation?
I think so. I mean, that was where a lot of my thought was going, was just making the trip easier. In the past, there was a lot of times where people are like, yeah, I know it's not the cheapest thing to do, but, especially for families. And I remember a lot of maybe single parents and stuff like that. They were just like, once it's booked, it's like kind of everything's set. Like you just get on your plane, you go there, you have the bus that takes you to the park, from the airport to Walt Disney World. They bring your bags, they give you the magic bands to start with, and you can just go out and go into the parks and have a good time. It doesn't take a lot of, planning once you're there. And so I think they need to get back to more of that mindset. It's price is definitely something, but you felt like you got, you could do a trip that wasn't crazy expensive because you felt like you were getting a lot for it. And now it just feels like everything's an add-on. There's less discounts. The parks are more crowded. If you want to skip the lines, you got to pay extra. So I think that's the big thing. And then the other thing that I kept thinking of is that they're doing more variable pricing, right? And we're seeing, spring break, so the Genie Plus is back to the most expensive it's ever been. And I feel like that's so counter to families, because the days when it's the most expensive and the tickets are the most expensive and the hotels are the most expensive are the days that most families can go, because they're the days that schools are closed, right?
Right.
So whether it's the summer, spring break, so it's like, it's great if they come out with these offers and discounts for like a random Thursday in April or May or something. But if families can't go, then it doesn't really help. So I think they need to figure out some other way to make it so families that can do it for a more reasonable rate when they can go. Otherwise, people are going to have to take kids out of school, and I don't know.
I mean, that's what we do now, right? We
Yeah.
take the kids out of school, and we did that in December. Yeah, I mean, like, again, I think accessibility is also, here we go. We're talking about price again. I didn't want to do it, but like when you said, the hotels are generally, they're more expensive, but they're not crazy more expensive. Even going back to a 2017 trip, staying at, where did I stay? Coronado Springs. I mean, it was in the high twos. And when I went to CBR this year, there was in the low threes when I booked it. I mean, there's not like, I spend another $50 a night to stay there, which is, in a 6-year span. I mean, that's fine. I'm agreeable to that, because that was one price for my whole family. The price it comes down to is the price of the tickets. And I guess I'm going to have to say this every single show now. People are going to get bored of me hearing complaining about ticket prices, but that's another thing. Another thing is, one of the biggest popular things that a lot of families went down on was the dining plan, right? So whether there was the quick service dining plan that you got when you stayed at a moderate or a value resort, or the actual Disney dining plan when you stayed at deluxe, or you upgraded it. I think a lot of people loved getting that in lieu of, a discount on their rooms or anything else like that. And it felt like a special package, right? So back our last trip, pre-pandemic 2019, we, it's all about ease of entry, right? So, we had to book our fast passes and our ADRs. I mean, that's still the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but once we were set in, we got our magic bands automatically mailed to us 30 days before. That was a milestone. We just had to drop our bags off. We flew down. We got the Magic Express. We got to our hotels. We didn't have to make park reservations. We just showed up because we always got the dining plan. So we knew how do we eat, and we're planning out where we're going to spend extra money doing this, that, or the other, but it was all done. Like, we had the bill. We weren't surprised when we got home with an extra $1,000 because we decided to have a bunch of different snacks and have a different meal experience, that type of thing. We knew what we already spent. And I think that has to do with the accessibility as well. And I think it comes down to nickel and diming, things that you have to now make micro decisions on a day-to-day basis. Like, forget about the money. Disney Genie Plus could be $1.
Yeah.
I don't even care that it's $1. It could be 50 cents. I don't really care. Let's say it's a cost that's negligible to almost everybody. $1. If you're going to Disney World, $1 means nothing at that point, right? So if you had to spend $5 for your family to get Genie Plus, no one's thinking about that twice. But the fact that you have to think about it and have to make that decision, right? It's like, all right, I got to go buy this now. I got to go buy this now. I got to go buy this now. I think that's the accessibility. People just don't want to deal with all those decisions and like little things, because it adds up to annoying. It doesn't, maybe even if they were all cheap, it's not the price that it adds up to, but it's the decision-making process that you have to go through. You're on vacation. Like, you should be deciding whether to get vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream. You should not be deciding on how much money you have to spend to enjoy your day after spending thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Already. So
no, I think that's a really good point. It's like, even when, whether it was, the special where dining plan was included or you had to pay for it, it was something you paid ahead of time. It was just part of the total bill that you would pay, every month towards until you paid it off. But once you were there, you had it. And like, thinking about like the Epcot booths when, all the things were included in snack credits, you didn't care if something was $8 or whatever, because it was part of your snack. It was already paid for. It was like, and, even relating it, I'm thinking, the cruise we just went on, we got the drink package, and like, yeah, it was expensive to pay that ahead of time, but then we didn't care. Like, we didn't really think about it when we got a drink because it was already covered or whatever, versus, having to think like, oh, do I want to pay for another one? So we probably spent more on the drink package than we would if we were just being choosy. And I think that all-inclusive feel is definitely missing right now. And so hopefully that's the type of accessible they're thinking about, where it's, you pay ahead of time and you just go and you just focus on having fun. You don't focus on strategizing your whole day and budgeting every little thing. And do you get Genie Plus this day, but not that day? And, all that sort of stuff.
Well, I mean, like here's the thing. So when you're talking about super important people around the world, CEOs, President of the United States, anybody like that, all their little decisions are done for them. Somebody plans out what they're wearing today. Somebody plans out when they're eating, what they're eating, where they're eating. They're planning out, okay, you're going here. So you could free up that person's brain to make very, very important decisions. Because CEOs and presidents are decision makers, right? They're not figuring things out. They're taking in data and they're processing it. And they do not have time to be bungled down with minute little details and things that don't make any sense for when you're at that level.
Yep.
Now, I'm not comparing every Disney vacationer to the president of the United States or a CEO, but you're on vacation. The more decisions you have to make the vacation less enjoyable. You should be making a decision what side of the park to have fun on, not like if I should afford this or if this is too expensive. Those little micro decisions have an impact on your. I mean, granted, yes, there's ways to get around it by having gift cards and all this other stuff that are prepaid and all this other stuff, but you're still doing the same math. So that doesn't change a thing. Are there any other things that are accessible? Like what you thought of accessible for the first time? What was the first thing that went through your head? Anything that we didn't discuss already?
Not really. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is just having more rides that appeal to everybody. It does seem like a lot of the newer rides are more thrill rides.
That's an interesting one.
So I think, it'd be nice if they get back to creating, we were talking about, somebody was on Discord was like planning out their days and like, can you give me advice for Hollywood studios and stuff? And like, do you get Genie Plus for there? Or that's when we were talking about giving the advice about stacking. And it's because there's a ton of great rides there, but a lot of them are kind of bigger e-ticket thrill rides that get the long lines, and it needs more, the C-ticket rides. And so hopefully that's something else they consider too, is just like, you just need more things for people to do. That's just easy, right? You just get in a 5-minute line and get on. You don't have to worry about, how long is the line here, watching the Lines app, or, do I get Genie Plus for it? It's like, no, it's just a fun ride that doesn't get a big line, and we can, use up some of the days there. So I hope they're looking at that aspect too, that there's more things for everybody to do.
As a side note, as there's more and more rumors swirling around, depending on where you read, there's some insiders out there, like on WDW Magic forums. There's a person that knows some Imagineers. Not that they know any details. All they know is that they're getting super, super busy. Don't know what that means, but they're preparing something. So all that blue sky stuff, whether it's exactly what they said or whatever, they're probably, with all of Iger's talk, with Wall Street saying they need to invest in the parks, like, what was the guy? What's the crazy guy on CNBC? Kramer?
Yeah.
With him saying they need to invest in the parks. What are they doing? They're probably going to listen to Wall Street, because that's all they do, these companies, right? Yeah. Do that type of thing. I think what we'll tell, depending we could tell the direction they want to go in, if the new areas in Magic Kingdom are going to be like Galaxy's Edge, where it's 2 big attractions and that's it. We'll know if they're turning a leaf, if there's going to be 1 or 2 major attractions and 2 or 3 smaller attractions, right? So you want to add maybe 4 attractions. 3 of them don't have to be a $500 million attractions.
Right.
They could be fun stuff. So we'll see what direction they want to go into. We'll finally figure that out. So, side note, side tangent that we'll be investigating as time goes on.
So, all right, I think we got into how I wanted to talk about that topic. I think we killed it. Yeah. So I think that
in more ways than one.
So let's move on to our top 3. I put in here characters that need to be in any nighttime spectacular, and where I came up with this was it kind of evolved a little bit from what I was thinking, but the latest reports out there from people that are tracking the fireworks and testing and stuff like that for the return of Happily Ever After is that, other than the new Main Street projections, it's actually going to be completely unchanged. They're not going to change anything out. No songs, no change to projections, no nothing. And it kind of, at first I was like, well, that's a little surprising that they wouldn't at least, get in some of the new characters, even if they don't have a big song, just have as part of the background, have people from Encanto and things like that. So it just kind of made me think, if we were going to make a new Disney Nighttime Spectacular in 2023, what like top 3 characters do you think have to be included for it to be successful, or you're like, I can't believe they didn't have that character in here. So that's where the top 3 came from.
Okay, so we did this something similar for Epcot with songs and music a couple weeks ago. So now we're doing with characters. I took this because you mentioned Happily Ever After. I took this to be a Magic Kingdom show, not just
that's fine.
any spectacular, right?
Yeah, whether it's something though that's Disney IP related, which certainly fits the Magic Kingdom. So yeah, so if you were making a new show for Magic Kingdom, what would characters you're like, these have to be in here in 2023 because of people will expect them.
So if we were, let me just preface this because I answered this for Magic Kingdom. I'll give my answers in a moment. If this was Hollywood Studios and they didn't have Fantasmic already, like two of the groups that were on my list are Star Wars characters and Marvel characters, right?
Okay.
But they are not on my list because they don't really belong in Magic Kingdom.
Yep.
So my Magic Kingdom characters are basically the Fab Five. It's Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, and Pluto. I think belong in something. So I think what they should have done were you have the normal projection show. I don't really care that the castle projections are the same because they're almost perfect.
Yep.
Why change it? Maybe add or whatever. That's fine. However, I think that the projections on Main Street should be all the classic characters kind of running around, playing, or running up to the edge in a big moment and just watching and looking up at, kind of time it so when the fireworks go off, they're looking up at it. And you can kind of just see some ancillary, like kind of having fun and stuff like that. I think that'd be a great place. I think you have to have classic princesses because that's what makes Disney billions of dollars a year, and it's what a lot of people come to see when they're coming to the parks. So my last two, B and C, or 2 and 3. These are our top 3, but we have them lettered in our.
Yeah, I guess we should probably change that
out. Anna and Elsa, because the last popular Disney princesses, and I think one of the classic ones has to be Cinderella, only because, or Cinderella, I guess, for Magic Kingdom. And then Disneyland would be Sleeping Beauty or Aurora, I guess. Okay. Whoever the castle belongs to that we're projecting on should definitely show up. So those are my 3. There's room for plenty more. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's silly to do top 3, but I think you have to have my A, which is, I mean, I could have just said Mickey, Minnie, and like Donald, ABC, and be done with it. And I think I would have been okay, but I wanted to give it some room to breathe with.
Although it's funny when you think about it, like Happily Ever After really doesn't have much of the Fab Five. It's other. It
has
movies.
Nothing other than, well, actually, no, it doesn't have them at all.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the Disney Enchantment was the only time that Mickey shows up in a projection too, when they finally added him.
When they added the new start. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's kind of interesting.
So, I mean, I would think, like, now that I'm thinking about it, like, why would Mickey not be the person that's presenting the nighttime spectacular, right? He's sitting there at the founder statue or whatever the statue. I know the statues have different names, but where he's holding Walt's hand. He's
the partners statue.
Partner statues. Yes, thank you. He should be showing off the fireworks show at the end. I don't know. Yep. What are your top 3? We're very close.
Yeah, they're similar along lines, and it is hard with 3. I mean, I definitely think in 2023, if they were doing a ground up show, you definitely would have Encanto in there and stuff like that. But the first ones I came to mind is I think you always have to go back to kind of like the beginning and the start. And I think you need to have Snow White in there, even if it's just a little bit.
Fair.
You got to have something from there.
See, I was going to put Snow White, but I saw Snow White on your list. I don't want to be exactly the same as you.
Yeah. I agree about the Fab Five. I put that I would definitely put Sorcerer Mickey in there. I think when I think about fireworks and kind of the nighttime spectacular, it's all like the magic and stuff like that. So I think, obviously it works really well with Fantasmic.
That's the reason why I didn't put him in there, because we have Fantasmic.
Yeah. I still think I would, if it was up to me, I would have him in there somewhere. And then I also put Anna and Elsa. I just think whether they have a whole feature song or something like that, they're just so popular that you have to have them. But, easily could have gone on with Moana or Encanto or something like that. There's a lot of popular things from the last 5 or 10 years as well.
Well, I mean, as the IP grows and there's generations of princesses, right? We have the pre-Ariel princesses, we have the Ariel to Rapunzel princesses, and then we have the post-Rapunzel princesses, and basically Moana and Anna Elsa. I think you could do a princess show, but then I don't know how many people you're turning, how many boys or girls that are not into princesses that you're kind of turning off, basically, because you don't have an eclectic collection of fun characters. But I think the I think Sorcerer Mickey would work for sure, absolutely. But then you can't have Fantasmic, and Fantasmic's such a great show.
Yeah.
That you just don't mess with it. So you have to. It's a different nighttime, because you can't have two Sorcerer Mickey shows, in my
Right.
opinion. Right? You got to have some kind of variety to it, in my opinion.
Fair enough. No, that's a good point.
That's my reasoning. Anyway.
Okay. And from that, we'll move on to our DBC engagement topic, which, Jason, you had the idea for last time, which was, do you think that a third location in the U.S. for a third park area for Disney parks would be successful? And if so, where would you put it? Would you go? And like, if you haven't been, and your question was, for a lot of us on Discord, haven't been to Disneyland out in California. If there was a new park, would that become a priority, or would you still put kind of on the bucket list getting out to California first before going to this third area?
So I was thinking about, because we were talking about, everybody's talking about like, what does Disney do about the crowds? And Cassistone on Discord, who he originally posted on WDW Magic Forums, thought, well, instead of building more lands, why doesn't Disney go out and put out a public bid for all the different cities across the country to offer like free tax relief and free land for like whatever, like how Amazon did it a bunch of years ago for
Right.
like North America headquarters. I thought that was such a fantastic idea, knowing that they would never do it. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what would they do if they put a major theme park somewhere, not just like Disney Quest or kind of like a regional, small little like indoor thing, but like an actual park that you can plan a vacation around, even if it's a weekend vacation. Like, would you go? And here I'm thinking to myself, oh, that sounds great. I would definitely go to a new park. Then I'd like, oh, I've never been to Disneyland on the West Coast. Like, I have another park to go to. I just haven't. And would I want to go? I mean, maybe, but it all comes down to cost, right? Disneyland for me is an expensive flight from the East Coast. Yes, you can find cheap flights to go out there for $300-$400 round trip, but I'm also bringing my family with me, and $400 or $500 times 5 is super expensive.
It definitely adds up.
And that makes it kind of difficult. So if there was another park that, let's say, was in driving distance, let's put it anywhere from, I don't know, Michigan down, Wisconsin area down through like, Missouri, Kansas area, kind of like the upper Midwest, then potentially, because that's like a 15 to 18-hour drive, depending on where you are. That is doable for me. And usually flights into Chicago from New York or Baltimore, Boston, Philly are relatively inexpensive. They're similar priced to flying to Orlando.
Yep.
I would definitely think about it now. And then obviously then you go down to, is it one park? Is it two parks? Is it's worth a weekend? Like there's a lot of other details that we're not going to fill in for this type of thing, but there's another Disney location somewhere that's not super expensive to get there with my family. I would certainly think about it. And I don't think I could actually, if I wanted to go up by myself to Disneyland, I don't think I could ever pull that off, because my family would hate me if I do that without them at that point. So that wouldn't be fair. What about you? So we have a new park. Let's pick it somewhere in the Midwest, where maybe it's a 16-hour drive or a similar cost of ticket to Orlando for you, because you're basically in the same area of the country as I'm.
So I guess I have a similar answer, where it would sort of depend on what they built there. Is it just a mirror of the Magic Kingdom and that sort of thing to kind of add capacity, or is it something completely different? I would definitely be intrigued. We have made it out to California at least once because we wanted to get there. So if this was something that was comparable cost, and it looked intriguing and they had some new things, I definitely would want to give it a go and put it into the rotation. Whether it's, I still think, my takeaway after I went to Disneyland was it confirmed that we're a Walt Disney World family. Like it's still not, I want to get to Disneyland again at some point, but it was like the park we're going to go regularly is Walt Disney World. And I suspect the same thing would happen with this third park. Like we would check it out as an alternative, but I would be surprised if it turned into like, well, that's where we're going to go regularly.
That's an interesting way to do it. A lot of good interaction on Discord. TL Madden was saying, I don't think a third location would be successful unless it was entirely new and unique theme, which I agree. And they didn't duplicate any rides. They definitely don't need a third castle park in the States. I disagree with that. I mean, it would have to be a different kind of castle,
right?
But not like a princess with a hub and spoke in a main street, right? That can't be that again. And he said a flight is a flight, which got me thinking, actually. I mean, depending on where you live, a flight to California might be just as expensive as a flight to Orlando.
I mean, I definitely have a lot of friends in sort of the Midwest, like in the, the Minnesota area and stuff like that. And like California to Florida, it's not probably that much of a difference, like which way you go.
So, I mean, that definitely you have to put in context for where you live when you start talking about these things. How would it draw more people than Florida or California does? Would it just dilute the audience? I think the idea would to dilute the audience at this point, right?
That was kind of my comment when I read a lot of these, where it's like, oh, Disney won't do this because it'll like thin out the crowds in Florida. I'm like, I think that's the point. Is that you want to get more total people in parks in general and make it easier to visit, thin out the crowds a little bit in Florida. But
Finn Whitman had a good statement. I'm not going to read his whole post, but he was talking about, well, if you have it strategically placed somewhere, you could have a whole park that was dedicated to Star Wars and Marvel because of the Comcast type of
it would have to be west of the Mississippi. As long as it's that, they could do that.
Yep. So I think that would be definitely something worth. I mean, if they opened up a Marvel park or like a half Marvel park, half something else or whatever it is, I think it would draw an immense amount of crowds to get there because that's a really popular IP. Lumpy mentioned that he concurs that he doesn't think it will ever happen. I don't think it will ever happen, right? So, I mean, this is just more of like, what if, right? So people took it a little bit too seriously. But he mentioned Hawaii. And I'm like, it would never be in Hawaii because that's even more expensive for everybody to get to. And they already have a property there, so they probably won't have to tie it in with Aulani. And there's probably not a lot of land right around Aulani to build a major theme park. And I don't think Hawaii has the infrastructure for like a theme park added on to those.
I mean, I guess they could do like kind of a small park, like so people who are visiting Aulani, like maybe they have a shuttle or something that takes them so they can get a little bit of a theme park,
a couple rides.
Yeah, but I can't imagine anything like a full on Disneyland in Hawaii.
No. We got two more. Doxy mentioned wouldn't complain if there's a park in Texas. She's from down that way. But with Universal and Peppa Pig moving in, it's not out of the question. So, I mean, that's a good point. But I think Disney will respond to the Dallas project for Universal until they respond to the actual project happening in Orlando,
right.
I think, right? So that's definitely what they're going to do. And Mama of Six was really interested in the Disney's America in Virginia, which I thought would have been really cool if they actually managed to open that up. But that failed for other reasons rather than Disney pulling the plug on that one. But I think we talked about that a couple years ago.
I think so. Yeah, we did. That was part of one of our the deep dives that we did back in the day.
All right, so we appreciate everybody's contributions to the show and the engagement topic last week. Next week, for this week, I should say, next week we're going to discuss if money is not part of the calculation. There it is again, money being part of any kind of calculation. It always is. The fantasy question is, how long could you honestly spend on property at Walt Disney World before going stir crazy? And obviously everybody's going to say, I could stay there forever. I could stay there for months. Really think about it, right?
Yeah.
Because
and I'm assuming with this, it's not just that you're staying at the hotel, but you can leave property. You're kind of basically saying like, no, you have to stay on Disney property.
It's a Disney vacation, right? You're there to be on Disney. You don't have a car. You have it's not like you don't have any responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you could spend a month there. You could take off time for work, right? Like you could do it, but you still have work to go back to. You still have a cat and a dog that might be taken care of somewhere. Like it's not like you have no responsibilities ever and you just get to be in Disney and live in the fantasy world for the rest of your life. No, you still have the real world is still surrounding you. So for me, I can't go longer than 2 weeks anywhere on vacation. I'm already answering the question here, but I'll go into more detail. It's going to be really interesting. You really think about it, right? This is not just a simple thing. I could spend weeks or whatever. It's like, think about how long you could really spend staying at a hotel at Disney World, not being able to leave and just staying on property. That means you could go to all 4 parks, any of the resorts, and then Disney Springs if you want to get shopping, because that's part of property too. So really think about it. Phil, I hope that you can think about it. I'm going to try to guess how long. That's what we're going to do, right? So next week, we're going to guess how long our answer is going to be before we actually truly answer it. All right, everybody. I think that's it, Phil, right? We're getting in under an hour for the first time in a long time, which I appreciate. I want to also mention, you forgot to mention this, or maybe you just skipped over it. The Happily Ever After countdown. Is Matt still going strong with that?
Yep.
It is at HEA at MK, 22 days away. So you can watch the countdown. He's posting cool pictures every single day. It's a good Twitter reminder for the morning when you're actually, when is he posting that? Now that I think about it. He posted the last one an hour ago. So this is definitely not something that's going to be your Twitter timeline when you wake up in the morning, unless you're a night owl. I don't know. All right, Phil, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Everybody, thank you for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and do all that other fun stuff to help support the program. And have a great week, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks all.